This just in, the drought is over for Purdue as they are back in the Final Four, and you just saw Zach Edey with a big block on Dalton Connect. Edey was the story for Purdue, as you would expect, as you get a replay of that block on Dalton Connect, who himself had a fantastic game for Tennessee, but it just was not enough as the Boilermakers are through to the Final Four for the first time in 44 years. Make it a 72-66 final. Zach Edey, a career-high 40 points, 16 rebounds. He had an assist, a steal, and the one block, which you just saw. And Dalton Connect, we talk about his game for Tennessee, 37 points, 3 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal. Unfortunately for Tennessee, they had nobody else in double figures. This is the first game in NCAA tournament history in which opposing players each scored at least half of their team's points. Welcome inside our Fort Lauderdale studios. Jeremy St. Louis alongside the coach Avery Johnson as we get some reaction to this. And coach, we talked about what Tennessee needed to do in this game. We talked about Dalton Connect, the role he needed to play. He did everything he could do, but this Purdue team and this Zach Edey just managed to get it done when they needed to get it done, made the shots he needed to make.
And you're exactly right. Dalton Connect did not get any help from his team today. And because he was the only guy in double figures, they're going to struggle. But give Purdue credit, because you ask me about what do they need to do to win this game. I said exactly how they beat Tennessee the first time. Look at the point differential in terms of points in the paint. Look at the free throws. The free throws were 33 free throw attempts to 11 free throw attempts for Tennessee. Zach Edey punished them in the paint. A couple of guys made some timely threes. You know, Lawyer makes one, Fletcher Lawyer makes one, Lamar Jones makes a huge three with 2 minutes and 44 seconds to go in the game. Obviously, Tennessee was very good with points off turnovers, but Purdue did not have an identity crisis. They played through Zach Edey. He basically fouled out their entire center, all 3 of them.
Yeah.
And then the foul that Awaka committed with 4 minutes and 42 seconds to go in the game, when they're down by 1 of the game's tied, that was a bad foul on a loose ball. You were never going to get that opportunity. But Tennessee fought, but this guy right here, he's a problem, Zach Edey.
6-point difference between the two going into the game. It was a 3.5-point edge for Purdue, so they managed to cover. Didn't get to the total, though, in terms of the overall point total here. But, Coach, we talked about this at halftime. How much of this goes back to the fact that Barnes did not call the timeout when Purdue was able to make that run in the first half and they surrendered that 11-point lead?
Yeah, that's a problem, because games are not always lost in the last 5 minutes of the game. That was a problem. I thought they could have called the timeout to try to slow it down, maybe get a play out of the timeout for Connect, run some misdirection for somebody else. But those 13-0 runs, it takes a lot out of your team, and it takes a lot to get back in the game. But independent of that, when the game's tied, you know, at what, the 4-minute mark, 4 minutes and 42-second mark, 6 minutes and 58, 5:34, the game's tied, you still have a chance.
Yeah.
If you would have asked Tennessee, if the game is tied with 5 minutes and 34 seconds left in the game, they would take it. Now, one thing they wouldn't take is they got pounded on the boards, 47-20. You know, Pat Riley used to say, no rebound, no win. And, you know, Purdue, they dominated this game inside and out. But, again, back to your question, yes, they could have called the timeout in the first half, but they were in this game with a little over 5 minutes to go. That's all you can ask for.
I'm just wondering how much momentum change that would be, just because of the fact you had such a good lead. You don't surrender that or as much of it, and maybe we're looking at a different result in this game, considering that it's a 6-point difference when all is said and done.
And you know one thing with Tennessee, they just they didn't have an inside game to force Zach Edey to play defense. When you can rest on defense, conserve all the energy, and just play on offense, I don't think they put enough pressure on Edey in transition, which we talked about. But, you know, being able to find some of their big guys, they found one late roll for a lob, but they didn't have enough of an inside game to force Edey to play defense. Or if they would have had like a stretch five, a big guy that could make three-point shots to bring him away from the basket. So he was just a one-man zone on defense that conserved a lot of his energy. And congratulations to Zach Edey and the Purdue Boilermakers. They were unbelievable today.
Yeah, and tough for Tennessee. I mean, they've never been to the Final Four. 0-6 versus 1 seeds. Now they fall here because of the loss to Purdue. But to your point, do you see the rebounding game was the big difference here? Because, I mean, you talked about the numbers there, but points in the paint's also a huge discrepancy. And I guess there's going to be when you've got a Zach Edey on your team.
Yeah, the rebounding was key because all of those offensive rebounds, those tip-ins, second shots, you know, Edey got away with a couple of pushes inside on some offensive rebounds. It's hard to officiate this guy, all right? It's not an easy thing to do. But, yes, the rebound was a difference. Now, you know, as we move into the Final Four, Purdue was a little sloppy offensively. You know, they're not going to be able to afford to give their next opponent 22 points off turnovers in a Final Four game. They're going to shoot the three better. Now, what is this team coming in was shooting 41% as a team from three? They struggled from the three-point line. Yeah. But can you only imagine if they were knocking down some threes, they really could have separated them.
Yeah, they shot 20% from three overall, shooting 45% from the field. And Fletcher Lawyer, we talked about the performance from Zach Edey, the 40 points. Fletcher Lawyer was next, 14 points for him. Braden Smith had 9. So, I mean, they only had 2 players that were in double figures versus what Tennessee had. But obviously the difference being that, you know, there's just so much more, I guess you want to say, composure in terms of how Purdue plays their game. They're well drilled in how they get things done through Zach Edey.
And you're right about Braden Smith. He did his damage in the first half, 9 points. Fletcher Lawyer ends up with 14, but a couple of timely baskets, offensive rebound, a 3, you know, nice little move there. So I think those guys picked it up at the right time. And then at the end of the day, and I shared it earlier, Lamar Jones, that 3 from the right wing with 2 minutes and 44 seconds to go in the game. I think that sealed it for him.
So if you're an opposing coach and you're looking at Zach, I mean, we've talked about this all tournament long. How do you defend against a guy like Zach Edey? Tennessee thought maybe they would have something locked in there to try and, you know, take away that inside game from him, but obviously it just didn't happen. What are your takeaways from what you saw today?
Well, with the rest of the teams that's going to be in the Final Four, so whether it's Duke or North Carolina State, you're talking about Alabama and Connecticut, what's the big underlying difference with those teams? They all have 5 men that can score one way or another.
Right.
Whether it's Klingham, who can score inside. DJ Burns is a handful. You're talking about Duke, enough said. So all of those 5 on those teams are offensive threats. Alabama, they have stretch 5s that can make the 3. Remember, Alabama and Purdue played early in the season, and it was a very high-scoring game. So Zach Edey's not going to be able to rest on defense against any of the teams that he's going to see in the final.
A 48th win in the NCAA tournament for Purdue. That's the most wins by a team to not win a national championship. So just looking ahead one game, forget about the national championship, looking ahead to the Final Four, it's going to be Duke or NC State that they're going to face. How do you like the matchup, Purdue versus those teams?
Well, if I'm Purdue, I'm probably cheering.
Yeah, who are you cheering for?
I'm cheering for Duke. I'm telling you. Oh, yeah, because, again, when you're a team that have basically no depth, they do not, Jeremy, listen to me, they do not have a bench. They don't have an X factor, right? And obviously they're a very talented team, but I would be cheering a little bit more because I wouldn't want to mess around with DJ Burns with that inside-out game. And North Carolina State, if they win this game against Duke, they're on fire right now. And, you know, that momentum can be a funny thing. But any of these teams, you know, If you're Duke, you probably wish that you can play against Purdue's second team because you know you would automatically win the game.
Yeah.
So any of these teams are going to be talented. I don't think there's a right answer.
I'm having a quick chuckle here because often behind the coach, we've got a screen of the live feed, and Purdue putting their thing on it. They put it on upside down and then had to turn it around. And hopefully that's not an omen for anything. Purdue, big win today versus Tennessee as they advance to the Final Four for the first time since 1980. Coach Avery Johnson here with us all afternoon, helping us break down this matchup and look at the Final Four games that are to come, as well as the rest of the Elite Eight. As you take a look at Purdue, success for them in 1980, Final Four and lost versus UCLA. 1969, they got to the title game and lost to UCLA. UCLA's not in the tournament anymore, so maybe this is the year for Purdue. Right now, they are into the Final Four, now waiting to see who they're going to play, Duke or NC State, next week in Phoenix. So it was a big win for the Boilermakers. Matt Painter and company lifting the trophy, cutting down the net as they celebrate a trip to Phoenix. We'll have highlights from this game coming up after the break.